Thank you very much for joining me today on this simple coach to coach interview. Really do appreciate it. I know your schedule these days is probably pretty full, so you taking the time to meet with me is just I'm really grateful.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Okay, so you've been a head coach of Messiah since 2009. You're a player under a legendary coach in his own right. You've won 5 national championships, which that's a little something there. And then you when I read your bio, I don't want to say you never left, but it's almost like your entire soccer experience has been at Messiah. And maybe could you just talk about how that happened, and then obviously how you ended up becoming the head coach?
Yeah, sure. So, graduated, played here for 4 years, graduated in '93, and then immediately jumped into playing for the Charlotte Eagles. That was back it's called the USISL. It was like the only league.
Yep.
There was a lot of teams in it. Played there for that summer, came back. I was a JV coach. We used to have a JV team here. So I was a JV coach for a year in the fall of '93. Went back down to Charlotte and then got a job out in Kansas at Heston College, just a junior college. So I was there for 6 years. Played a couple more seasons for the Eagles in the summer. Had a job. Moved to South Carolina. I was at Erskine College. This is a Division II school, so I coached women for a year. Then Dave called me up. He said, there's a spot here. 3/4 time assistant AD, quarter time assistant men's soccer coach, and so felt like the Lord was maybe calling me to be an administrator. So I came back, back to where both my wife and I graduated from, program that I was a part of. And, I was Dave's assistant for 8 years. What's interesting is like playing 4 years in college, playing 4 years professionally, being a head college soccer coach for 7 years. None of that compared to what I learned and how much I grew under the 8 years under Dave.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Dave was an assistant coach when I played here. I played for Leighton Shoemaker, just a great coach, a great man, pursued excellence, loved the Lord. Dave just took it to the next level in regard to, I think, his vision for what he wanted the program to look like on and off the field. And so that really impacted me. And, when Dave left, people would ask me, if Dave would ever leave, would you want that job? And I'm like, I don't think so, man. I'm like, the amount of emotional energy he poured into it, I was just like, that looks ridiculous. And, interviewed, it's interesting. Every job I've ever had, I've been the second choice, right? And this job included. And when I think sometimes pride gets in the way of so many opportunities for people, because hey, when you get the job, it doesn't matter who they offered to and who said no. And so that's certainly a crazy job. Like, who would want that? Who would follow a guy who won 6 national championships and was 3-time national coach of the year? You're only gonna mess that up. And so Mike Zigarelli, he ended up writing a book, but he was in my door that fall. It's like, hey, can I interview you and follow you and the team around? Be interested in writing a book on, how to replace somebody. And I was like, no way, man. No, no, man.
Bad idea.
Like, no. I'm like, that's a great idea, but I'm like, no way. I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
So, I think that was challenging, to say the least, to follow. It's a tall shadow that's still here, and I'm okay with that. I think a key to a successful coach is one who's humble, one who's secure. I'm secure. I know who I am. I know what I'm not. My identity's in Christ. But I'm also like, I know what I do well and I know what I don't do well. And I think the worst coaches are those that are insecure and they don't want anybody to find out that they're really an average coach, when most of us are pretty average coaches, to be honest. So
that's an incredible observation. I won't go any further with it, but yeah, I always say, probably in a little bit harsher terms, like I know of a lot of coaches that are just afraid that everyone's going to find out how much of a fraud they might be.
Yeah,
So,
no, I mean,
including myself, like I
yeah.
keep going through this, like I don't know anything, like I'm just, let me just ask you, because that was going to be one of my questions. You're taking over for Coach Brandt, 6 national championships. And you've done, like, you've won the five yourself, and like, do you still deal with that sort of legacy at Messiah? I mean, look, I gotta believe, not having been there, not part of the program or whatever, just as an observer outside from the outside, there is a lot of legacy to Messiah soccer on both sides, right? Men and women's.
Yeah.
And how large does that loom, and from a coaching perspective, how large does that loom on you on a yearly basis?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all, regardless of your role and your position, there's expectations placed upon you that you do yourself,
Mm-hmm.
that constituents place upon us, and I think that's certainly true at Messiah. It's both a blessing and a curse to walk down, this hallway. You're reminded by all the accomplishments of lots of different programs, including men's soccer. And then you're like, man, I got to do that again. Like that's partly when you're talking about the pursuit of success and your identity is in winning in championships. And we try and pursue excellence, attention to detail, the quality with which we do little things, and we read the Bible to remind ourselves, because we all have amnesia regarding who we are, and so just kind of remind myself who I am, because I mean I'm human. I'm like, yeah, we haven't won a national championship in the last 4 years, and so for some they're like, hey, what's going on? What's wrong? I'm like, thought we had a good team. What I love is my players, they get better, they grow, they mature. I thought we had a good season last year. Did we make it to the Final Four? No. Did we win a national championship? No. But for me, I'm like, there's things I can control, things I can't.
Yeah.
2 things that I said I can control is bringing in kids that are just a great fit, just awesome, just mature Christian kid, high level buy-in, good students, great mindset, great work ethic, skillful, fast, competitive, fire. Yeah. And the second thing is just make sure, the core values that I think Dave, brought to the program, that, we want to just maintain that in the forefront of both the coaches and the players. Mm-hmm. So, when you start worrying about winning and success, I'm like, man, there's not a worse sport than soccer. You just like, you crush a team and you lose, 1-0, or you smash a team and you lose in penalty kicks. Like, I've never seen a football team crush another team and lose.
Yeah.
Ice hockey, you can see that. Field hockey, lower scoring sports, you can see that more. Mm-hmm. So, I think those are some of the things that we focus on.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say you pursue excellence. Is that sort of the motto there, pursuing excellence, as opposed to pursuing trophies or pursuing wins?
I mean, our purpose, what's our purpose? Is to point people to the Lord. Our vision, we want to be the best place in the country to play soccer. So, there's going to be teams that win more than us. There's going to be teams that are cheaper, Division I versus Division III, but we want to be the best place to be. And so, we have core values. One of those is the pursuit of excellence versus the pursuit of success. And so, I think when you pursue excellence, if you're patient, sometimes you're fortunate to bump up against success. There's no guarantees that you're going to be successful. And so we don't talk about championships very much. We don't talk about winning very much. We talk about wanting to win.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah.
You gotta want to win.
Yeah.
I tell recruits you gotta want to do well on your chem test. Like if you don't want to do well, you probably won't.
Yeah.
Now, if you fail, the question is that a reflection on who you are because you've been told you're smart, you're going to be a doctor, you're smart, you go to college and you get your teeth kicked in with your first, and you're like backpedaling, you're like, I'm going to switch my major because that's my identity. And so we want to risk our heart. We want to win. We want to compete. And when we lose, it hurts, but it's not a reflection on who we are. Like if you have a growth mindset and you do poorly on an exam, it doesn't mean that you're dumb. It just means you shouldn't study in front of the TV, right? So there's things that we discuss and talk about that I think is helpful to maintain, because there's nothing more miserable than the year after you're successful. It's like maybe you're a salesman, and you just crushed it on the Eastern Seaboard.
Yeah.
and then you got to do it again.
And start from zero. I always say January 1st, start from zero.
Oh. I call that the unhealthy grind versus the healthy grind. The healthy grind, just like, man, I'm gonna do it really well every time. I'm gonna crush this sales pitch. Doesn't matter if it's the smallest account. I'm gonna crush it. So when you get to a really big account, you're like, I know what I'm doing. I know how to crush this.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that the ball's going to go in the hole, right? I'm like, but you set up that putt well, and you set up that sail well, and
you did everything you could. Yeah. The stuff you could control, right? Like you take care of that, and whatever outcome it is, you've improved your chances, but there's no guarantee, right?
No, not
in this world. Not in this sport, not in this world, right? Hey, I have the book, The Messiah Method, and I was just curious, like, is that still the Messiah Method? Is it still in place? And was there a lot of transformation that you did from this highly successful program, and then you come on board? Did you change things, or did you sort of just say, I don't want to say a caretaker. I don't want to take away from you and what you've done, but almost like, this is a formula that works and we're going to continue that.
Yeah. I mean, to answer your first question in regards to the book, I think that book, it's an easy read. It's a page turner. We didn't write it. Mike Zigarelli wrote it in the business department. He just interviewed people, and it's a bunch of interviews and quotes, and he pulled stuff from it, and made it, in something that you could read and you could grab a hold of that would be applicable to, business.
Any organization.
He's a business prof, and I think a lot of that stuff that we do is part of who we are. And I think it's fairly accurate. In regard to the transition from Dave, I had a lot of people say, what are you going to do? What are you going to do differently? How are you going to change the program? And I'm just like, man, I don't know. I don't. What am I going to change? I'm like, not much, and I haven't. And again, I go back to knowing who you are, being humble, being willing to grow and to learn and to not need credit. I would say, right. I'm like, this is Dave's vision that I'm running with for all I'm worth.
Mhm.
I'm different than Dave. I'm a different personality from Dave, but it doesn't change the what we're straining for here.
Mhm.
And so, no, I would say, there was more that we kept the same than what we changed.
Yeah. Um, okay, so this one I'm just curious, and it's not a disrespectful thing, and I'm just curious, right? Because there are so many different schools in Division Three, so many different types of schools, big division, small, all that. They're all unique, and I always say they all have the capability to be better, right? Every program does. But I am really curious, right? Like, you're a small school in the middle of PA that literally plays the game like probably no other Division Three team that I've watched in the past year. You know, you guys make probably, by my calculations, somewhere between 600 700 passes a game, right? You spend probably almost a half of that time in the opponent's half with the ball in control. You know, why Messiah? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what was it? What started it off that made this place such a great, again, from the outside, this great soccer program, that, again, notoriety, I don't want to say notoriety, but outside of that, if you're not located regionally, you don't know necessarily about
Sure,
Messiah.
sure, sure,
And I
sure.
don't mean this in a bad way. I'm like legitimately curious.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I just had an interview earlier today with a gentleman. He's down in Florida. He went to Catholic, so he was familiar with Division Three and Messiah, but he's like, nobody down here in Florida has heard of
Right.
Messiah. I'm okay with that. I have neighbors in Mechanicsburg, that don't know we have a soccer program. I'm like, it's all good. I got no problem with that. Messiah's not for everybody. Messiah, for the right kid, I think there's no better place. But um, you know, if it's hard. It's hard sometimes to pull apart on the field and off the field stuff. Um, you're talking specifically about kind of our style of play. Um, I think that's directly from Dave. Now Leighton impacted that. Leighton wanted to have the ball. He wanted to possess. That was important to him. Um, I think, there was a famous coach who said one time, Messiah's, not tough enough to win a national championship. And that was um, maybe the case, certainly for some teams at times. They won a couple NCCAA national championships, one in '78 and one in '81. Jumped into NCAA's and made a couple Final Fours in '86 and '88. We were Sweet 16 my senior year, but I think Dave, brought both a competitive fire and a toughness
Mhm.
that hadn't always been here. We were kind of like nice Christian kids. The other thing that Dave brought was, um, I think detail in a time of soccer where it was kind of like, hey, we're gonna like kind of teach some of these random ideas and policy, just like idea, and then we're gonna roll the ball out, and then I'm just gonna like sit back, and it's a player's game. And in some respects, that's true, right? Like
Yeah.
there's no timeouts, there's no like quarters. It's 45 minutes, so there's certainly more responsibility that players have compared to a lacrosse coach, a basketball coach who can like call timeout and call a play. And I think some of that has changed, with the rise of game models and all that stuff. But Dave's was interested in finding how much he could control in the game, and I think the thing that opened my eyes when I was, I was in Kansas and South Carolina for 7 years and came back, and Dave had been the head coach for 4 years. What opened my eyes was Dave's ability to break it down where what you practiced showed up in a game.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times in soccer, coach is like, we're going to play rondo for 30 minutes, possess. And then you get to the game and they're like, kick it to the corner, so to see what to have those things. And, when you have a lot of structure, it feels uncomfortable for our newer players, because what we're saying is, here's a box of team agreements that we're all going to be on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how you need to do it. And they're used to doing whatever they want. And we're like, well, we can't be on the same page if you just do whatever you want. And they're like, why can't, it's this uncomfortability. But once you learn all the different options and the choices that you have within that construct, you have the freedom to do lots of different things. You just can't do whatever you want. Now, sometimes if you bring something and you're like, I want to add this, and we're like, oh, all right, everybody can do this, because it's effective. If you try and do something, it doesn't work. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't work. And so I think this idea that there's structure in a game that inherently feels unstructured, just 22 different players with that it's flowing all the time, and I think you see it much more now in a lot of different areas than when Dave took over in the late 90s.
It is really, I mean, it's remarkable to me. Again, like I said, there's all these different schools that are all competing in soccer, and then Messiah is, I think, a shining example for them. If that, I again, in my perspective, you play right, you play the right way, like things open up for you, and you're able to control a lot more. And I think I look at you guys, and again, as an example of that. And again, it's just my personal preference. There's multiple ways to play the game, but
yeah, there is. I mean, we say a lot, but we model ourselves after two programs. One's the Dutch, who very cerebral. We play a 4-3-3. We have since around 2000. It's about spacing, and UNC women. They don't care about any of that stuff. They're just going to kick your teeth in, right, and take your lunch money. And so, where the Dutch are like, hey, we played pretty, but we didn't necessarily win. Because I mean, I have full respect for teams that,
live or die by their way. Yeah.
Yeah, they just play direct. They're very aggressive. They're athletic. Set pieces. I'm like, it's an effective way to play. And so I'm not ever going to put my nose up and be like, oh, our way is the best way and the only way and the right. I'm like, it's just the way that we've chosen to play.
Yeah.
I think in the end, we want to create as many scoring opportunities as we can and limit as many as we can, right? So I'm like, well, if I'm going to do that, I want to play as far away from my goal as possible. And I want to win it back as soon as I lose it, right? I'm like, it's sort of common sense. I mean, I think the other thing that we have learned here at Messiah is how to play against a low block. Sometimes teams purposefully are in a low block. They're just like, hey, we're gonna deny you opportunities in front of our goal. Sometimes they're just playing normal defense, but we have the ball, and so they're just behind the ball. But I think we've done a good job of trying to find ways to unlock that. And we try and give our guys keys to unlock that. And so, I think that lends itself to us having the ball more in our opponent's half.
I mean, in your tenure, I mean, in what, that's 13 years, almost 13 years?
Yeah, I think next year's 14.
Like, has the game evolved much from your perspective in in college in Division three?
Yeah. I mean, I'll go back to like when I got here in 2001. I mean, I think it's changed significantly. Um, One, everyone played a 4-4-2 then. So we had three center midfielders. So we always had an extra midfielder.
Mm-hmm.
Two, teams weren't very fit.
Mm-hmm.
And the gap between Messiah and an average team was great. We would we'd win like 8-0,
Mm-hmm.
like lots of games.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do that. That doesn't happen anymore. Um, Teams, have much more wider variety of formations that they
Mm-hmm.
play. They're much fitter than they ever were back then.
Yeah.
Individually, players are just fit. Teams are fitter. They have technology which aids them in that, and
Mm-hmm.
they care more. There's just a higher level,
Yeah.
and so I think that gap is certainly closer. I tell people, I'm like, I think we can beat anybody in the country, and I think anybody, and we can lose to anybody in the country. Like, soccer's a funny sport that way.
Yeah.
And so, I think certainly the level of fitness of players, and yeah, I think just technically and tactically, it's significantly different than when I got here in
Yeah.
2001.
Are the players any smarter, do you think? They're fitter. They're fitter. Are they better on the ball or?
Yeah, I would certainly more technical,
Yeah.
certainly fitter. I'm like smarter. I think that's hard for me to know. I don't know how they're being coached. I would say that coaches, uh, you know, have certainly advanced their, you know, defensive tactics. Their plans that way. Whether that's a mid block, a low block, whether that's you know um, pinching really hard, or whether they're playing a high press. It's just some of those things I think have have grown and changed significantly.
Um, this is something I started asking just because I realized, or I was told to ask, because my COVID experience has always been in here. I've been working from home in my regular job, which I know you might be surprised. Being a YouTube influencer is not my full-time gig. Um, but how difficult was COVID for you? Like, or not for you, I guess for you as from coaching staff to your players. I again, I've sort of been in here the whole time, so to me it
Yeah.
was not a big deal. Um, so yeah, just how difficult was that time period?
So half my load is an associate athletic director.
Mm.
That was brutal. Um, you know, it's always like it was a moving target, right?
Yeah.
Um, and to try and be on that side where we're trying to figure out what to do, what to not to do, and communicate that to coaches, like that was painful. As far as a coach, you know, you could call it unhealthy. I compartmentalized my life pretty doggone well. And I was just like, tell me what I can do, tell me what I can't do, and um, it was weird, 2 falls ago when we were on campus. We were like 2 weeks of like groups of 6 or whatever, and they couldn't touch another ball that someone else touched, like crazy stuff. Like we didn't know what was going on. We didn't
Yeah.
know how it was spread. But we were able to progress. We had an inter squad scrimmage.
Mhm.
We had I think 3 of them, and we uh, posted it on Facebook Live.
Yeah.
And I think what we just kept pounding, and I think is the mark of a mature Christian, is just gratefulness. We were just
Yeah.
grateful to be in school, grateful to be able to practice. There were some of the schools in our conference that couldn't practice.
Yeah.
Grateful that we could play each other.
Yeah.
Was it hard? Yeah, it was brutal on our players. I think the hardest hit group are freshmen last year,
Yeah.
current sophomores. It's just painful. Like, they finally get to go to college, and there's more rules than they had in middle school. And
Yeah.
you couldn't visit enough. You couldn't be in a teammate's room. Like, you couldn't. You had to have a mask on. Like, oh, I felt like they had the hardest deal.
Yeah.
And so that was certainly tough.
Yeah, that's there was no positives because of that. No, there's a lot of positives, but just your college experience. My son, his senior year in high school, when it's supposed to be this great year,
Yeah,
he was home half the time.
my daughter as well.
Yeah, just crazy. So this might be a loaded question because you are an assistant AD. You have that capacity as well, but I gather you've heard about the proposed D3 substitution changes. Do you have any thoughts on them? Like, good, bad? Would it impact how you sort of manage your program and manage games and whatnot?
Yeah. I mean, I think I understand it some. I'm like, I can understand why Division I would want to do that. They're like, they want to play once a week in the fall and the spring, and so you can play, you can play 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Division III is not likely going to go to a fall and spring format. I think, we're likely still going to be playing 2 games a week. I don't think that will change. So I understand what Division I is thinking. The problem is we're tied to Division I with rules changes.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be interested in the possibility of maybe having it, but that's really structural. That's really deep in the NCAA.
Yeah.
We can be different than the women. That's interesting. We can have different rules than the women, but we can't have different rules than Division I, Division II.
Yeah.
In Division III, it's non-scholarship athletes who, rosters are significant. That's part of enrollment, and retention is huge. 18 years ago, the internet bubble burst and people stopped having babies for a little bit. And so there's just less kids around here in the Mid-Atlantic. And so, to have something where, that's going to have a significant impact on culture and buy-in and team chemistry. Because picture the score. It's 1-0 in the second half. Like, you're gonna sub your midfielders. You're gonna sub your goal scorer. You're gonna sub any defenders. Like, no. I'm like, all right. Well, say you're winning 1-0, you don't do that. I'm like, okay. What if you're losing 1-0? You get a sub? Like, no. What if it's tied?
Yeah.
What if you're winning 2-0? You're gonna sub off your best center midfielder, knowing that he can't go back on?
Yeah.
And the answer is no. The challenge with that, I'm like, isn't necessarily like, this purist idea of, hey, we want to be similar to, international. So I'm like, we're not international. We play 2 months a year. Like, there's tons of things that were different from international level, soccer. And so, for me to not be able to get my younger guys playing time is significant to their development, their commitment, their buy-in, their overall core experience would have an impact.
Yeah.
Would it help me win more games? Yeah. I do have the ball quite a bit.
Yeah.
And if they can't sub and give their best player a 10, 15-minute break in the middle of
That
the half,
helps
I'm
you.
like, he's either going to be gassed and then
Yeah.
can't keep up, or then at the end of the game, they're going to have to put their second group on. Like, no, I think it would help me win more games, and I think it would, crush the soul of our younger players.
Yeah. I always wondered, the same, like, I appreciate this desire to align with some mythical standard, international standards and whatnot. And I get that. I guess the question I'm wondering about is, like, what's the purpose of that? Like, what does that benefit anybody? Let's be realistic, right? The majority of those Division I players, they're not turning professional, right? A couple here, a couple there. That's all great. And, they're not going to make some crazy career, and they're not all going to be national team, pool players. So then what's the alignment for, right? Isn't here for college and for participation, all that kind of stuff. But, yeah, anyhow. You mentioned earlier about, I don't know if it's a document or whatever, you sort of said, like, these are the things that we believe in. Like, are those does it sounds like you have some non-negotiables, or were you more talking about, this is soccer, how we want to play soccer, these are the 20 things that we stick to because this is the way we play? Or
I think both. We have a set of 7 core values that's important to us, that has nothing to do with soccer, that's applicable for them when they leave. When you're 18 to 22, when you go from 18 to 22, you grow up, you mature, you have battle scars, you make good choices and you make bad choices, and you had to learn from that. And that happens at Messiah. We just want it to be on steroids, where we can, like, pour into these into their lives, where they leave and they're a better friend and a better teammate, and they're a better son and a better brother and a better employee, employer, husband, father, where they can impact people's lives. For us, that's just, leadership is the ability to influence. We don't have captains at Messiah.
Mm-hmm.
Our expectation is that, those recruits and prospective student athletes and freshmen, they understand our core values. But as a sophomore, like, you've lived it, and then you embrace it, right? You're like, these things are important to me because of what I want, because of what I believe. Juniors and seniors, we ask them to model it.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that they have to embody those core values, they have to walk. You can hide in high school, you can't hide in college, right?
College. Yeah.
No, they know what you look like when you haven't eaten and you're hangry. Like,
Yeah.
So, I think this idea that we want upperclassmen to invest in our younger guys, just like, is important to us. It's an opportunity to leave a legacy. No one knows who the leading goal scorer was at Messiah 4 years ago, but the ability to invest and impact someone's life, it's tremendous. And so, I think the vision for guys to grow and mature. And so we certainly have clear standards. I call it formal norms versus informal norms. Lots of programs have informal norms. Informal norms are based on typically who your seniors are that year, who your captains are that year. On a club team, it's who the alpha male is, right? Mm-hmm. The guy with the strongest personality is going to dictate what's okay, what's not okay, and what's the lowest acceptable rate of whatever that may be, right? Work rate, whatever. Like, what's the lowest that's acceptable? Okay, that's the standard. And so, I think we do a good job of not allowing two guys to dictate what kind of season we're going to have.
Yeah.
And so we certainly have clear expectations, standards, core values, and it's very visionary, and it's very why oriented. Like we never say, "Hey, we don't do that here." It's like, "Hey, help me understand what's going on. Let me help you understand why we do it like this."
Yeah.
I'm like, otherwise you're just changing behavior. Like you can change behavior. You can whack a kid upside the head. Well, maybe you can't do that, but you you can change their behavior through sheer force and just but if
Fear.
you can change
Yeah.
their heart, if you can get them to understand why, then they're going to do it because they want to do it,
Yeah.
not because you're forcing them to do it.
Yeah.
On the fields, yeah, I'm like, it's funny, game models are the rage, right? All these things, this is what we do, this is how
Yeah.
we do it.
Yeah.
And I'm blown away by some of the stuff that I see. I'm just like, wow. I'm like, they've got their whole game model, and they've got video clips of their practices. That they got video clips of their game. I'm like, wow. I'm like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Part of the reason I don't have that, and we don't have that type of community, the way we communicate that game model is all my assistant coaches. They played here. They know what I want. They know what we do, and they know why. I don't have an entire staff that I need to catch up to speed. Like, I think we have really we have detail oriented system in place and style in place that we teach, and so uh, there are to say non-negotiables. I'm like, I think that implies there's things you can and cannot do. For me, I'm like, I liked archery when I was a kid, and for me, life is about archery, and it's like I'm always aiming for the bullseye. This is what I want.
Yeah.
If you hit this next rung, that's so far. That's okay. If you hit this rung, as long as you're aiming for this.
Yeah.
If you don't even hit the target, I'm like, now we have issues.
Yeah.
And we wanna give tools in their tool belt, be like, hey, these are the ways that you can, that if you're in this situation, to help you manage it.
Hmm.
Again, you just can't do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And so I think that helps guys be on the same page.
Yeah.
And two, it helps players learn how to be efficient within our system. If it's just your ability to be effective, if you come in to a new team, new system, new style, and you're not effective, push you aside so we can find someone who is
Yeah.
effective.
Yeah.
Where I think what we do is we teach players what we want and why, so that they can learn that and understand that, hone their craft, and then when we put them on the field, they can execute.
Yeah. I do think there's a lot of that, right? Where you're taking there's a lot of coaches that look to, I'm going to take a kid because I'm taking a kid as part of this recruiting class because I see them fitting here, and without the training, right? That whatever they produce in their club days, they can mimic in the college game, and so because it fits a particular piece, and that not a lot of coaches say, I like the kid from a broader perspective, what he's capable of doing. Now, can I take him and how to teach him to be successful with who he is as a player into my system? I don't know if that makes sense, but um, it, I'll ask you this one. From a coaching perspective, and be two things, because the calendar is so compressed, and you really only have 2 days per game, right, to prepare. And then, not to mention, Messiah plays a very unique way, compared to most other I think all schools. But um, do you prepare during the season for the individual games that you're going to play, or do you just sort of say, "This is how we play. This is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to win"?
Yeah, I would say more the latter. Uh, John Wooden, gosh, he won a ton. He was certainly more interested in how his team played rather than what his opponent did. I think there's a spectrum there. I think certainly a trap is to like always be practicing based on what your opponent does and what formation they play, and then you change your formation and you practice that. I don't think players like that.
Yeah.
I think you can do it some. I think video breakdown is you can do those things. I would be more of an advocate, even in the college game, even with 2 days before. I'm like, man, have a home, have a system that you play, run with that for all you're worth. Teach your players how to play that position. So that like doesn't mean that you can't change formations, but to have a different formation like every game, every week, where people are in different starting spots and different roles. I think that's oftentimes not a positive experience from a player's perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, I just remember when I played and I was a goalkeeper, I just bristled at the idea that we would spend time changing how we were going to do things and rather than hone. And I think just generically as a player, right? Like just, it's the simple, tell me what you want me to do. Let me keep doing until I get it. And then, I'm good at that, right? Like there's no variability in that. With everything that was going on with COVID and all, like, what were your expectations for the year? Did you have expectations other than just being grateful that you were able to play a season?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Expectations are a funny thing. I don't know if I have. I don't know if I have expectations per se. Outside of making sure that guys are on the same page. I want to teach, right? I'm like, I want my guys to learn. We talk a lot about playing to a standard. And I think there are times when you get a taste of it, right? You get a taste of it in practice. You get a taste of it in a game. We're like, that's what we're shooting for. This really high level of play.
Yeah.
And so we're always striving for that. When you strive for that and you find ways to hit it, and sometimes you stay there for a little while. I tell my teams all the time, I'm like, it's oftentimes not until we hit NCAAs that happens.
Yeah.
There was a year not that long ago where we didn't make NCAAs. We lost some early games.
Mm-hmm.
But by the end of the year, I'm like, there wasn't anybody that would have wanted us in their pod.
Yeah.
And when we didn't get that opportunity to play an opponent that played us straight up and it was an even match to allow us, and to play at a high level. And we don't win all our games. We lose. We play teams that, in our conference that, it's always a battle and they play us really well. But sometimes it's not till postseason that I think we're able to really play at a really high level together against, a strong opponent. And so, I think that idea of playing to a standard has been beneficial when you play someone who's not very good, and then, say you're playing someone who you should be. Well, we're still like, it doesn't matter. Like, we want to play here.
Yeah.
And then, when you're playing a huge game, a conference championship or NCAA, you're like, hey, it's no different than every other game. One of the things we say every game, every game's a big game, and that's important to us. And so it allows us to play with a level of consistency that's beneficial.
That's the idea of playing to a standard, it's true. When you hit it as a soccer player and you get to that place where you're like, man, we were at this is where we want to stay at that. It's almost exhilarating, right? Like if you could touch that and play 5 minutes, 10 minutes like that, where you're like, man, everything was in tune. That's you almost have like a drug reaction, right? Like you get the endorphins going. It's contagious. All right, so you lost 2 games all season. This past one, the regular season against Penn State Harrisburg, and then the Elite Eight against Washington and Lee. Just in general, in hindsight, were there anything about those 2 games that was not characteristic of the way you want to play? Or was there something about those games where you're like, if I can pinpoint those losses, it's because we didn't control the ball well enough? Or
I think Penn State Harrisburg. I think they're coach does a good job with them. They're very organized defensively, but they're athletic. Thought they. I thought a tie would have been a fair result. I thought we didn't create a lot of chances. I thought they did a very good job of limiting our ability to get in behind. But we had some clear chances. They cleared a head ball off the goal.
Yeah.
They didn't have many chances. They had some good looks. They had one really good look early, that our keeper just happened to, it's like almost like kicked it right into him. And then there was a moment of quality, scored a brilliant head ball goal. He was between our center backs. It was
legit goal.
Yeah, it was just it was a quick turnover. Guy got the ball, played it in, and he had a lot to do with that head ball. Like he had to work hard to back up and get it on goal. And so, there's been times when we've lost games, like we'd have an absolute battle with York College, and sometimes you're like, when something doesn't go as you want, you're like, hey, what do I need to do differently? I can't keep doing the same thing and expect different results, right?
Yeah.
Like it's insanity.
Yeah.
But there's also times where I've been done. We walk out of York and we have a loss, and I'm like, we're fine. We're a good team. I'm like, we need to continue to do what we're doing, and I have confidence in that. And I feel like that has to do with our ability to execute, our ability to create scoring opportunities, our opportunity to, and our ability to deny them opportunities to score. Washington Lee has some dynamic. We did not have a goal scorer.
Yeah.
I didn't have anybody that had more than 8 goals on my team.
I saw that.
But we scored 70.
Yeah.
As a team. I'm like, there's good and bad to that. Scoring by committee is there's a strength to that shared responsibility. There's lots of different people that can score. I think that's really helpful during the regular season. Oftentimes in the postseason,
you need a guy.
I think there's times when chances are fewer because the level is higher. Now that being said, we gave up 3 goals. I'm like, you can't give up 3 goals, and their talented goal scorer. He had half a chance. I had 3 guys around him.
I don't know how he scored that one.
and he finished a great goal. Yeah. Another guy hit a bomb from.
Yeah.
We had 5 guys goal side of the ball. Could we have stepped aside? Yeah, we could have. But I'm like, another great moment of quality from him, and then a PK. I thought we played well that game. I thought we had a lot of the ball. I thought we created chances. Um, and and uh, and so you know, you would mention Kenyon. We can talk about Kenyon if one. Kenyon kicked our teeth in second half. Shots were 12-3. I mean, I was in bed till noon the next day. Just like that game. That game was more painful for me than Washington and Lee.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Kenyon. I consider it, again, this is there's no rhyme or reason as to why I think games are better than the other, but to me that was the best game I watched all year, and I watched 200, somewhere in that range of games. I always say I need a therapist for that because it's I won't go into the why, but and I that to me is the best game of the year, and I think it was because, first of all, I thought Kenyon was awesome.
Yeah, they
Like,
were.
like, give them all the credit in the world.
Yeah.
I thought they were awesome. But then I was surprised at how much of a struggle it was for you guys to
Yeah.
get anything going.
Yeah.
And it was the first time, and I don't know if this is accurate, again, outside, it was the first time you almost felt like betrayed by how you were playing, what your style of play was. Like it wasn't working for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know, your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I thought we had a game plan going in that I thought was successful in the first half. I thought we made him uncomfortable. I thought we had the ball. I thought we created chances. He tried making adjustments first half, but it's not sometimes until halftime where he just wanted them playing much more direct. I was surprised by that.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, and you combine that with their pressure, we couldn't break the pressure, right? At one point, Aaron Farrell leans over. What we call resting defense is when we have the ball, we're in a position to win it right back if we lose it.
Yeah.
So we have it. We're in it. So it's both a mentality and positional. And he just leaned over. He's like, they got us in resting defense. Like we couldn't get out. I think positionally, I think I could have done a little bit better. Matt McDonald's, fun player to watch.
Oh, my favorite.
But didn't necessarily help us win the territory battle that game. Couldn't get the ball, receive it, and keep it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we had, three center midfielders that are all skillful and smart, but not on the real athletic end.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, when Luke Grotoff broke his ankle against Eastern,
Mm-hmm.
and we lost him for the rest of the year, like that lack of athleticism impacted us against Kenyon, impacted us against Washington and Lee, where, the work rate of Trevor Goodling and Luke Brodigan, they just don't stop running. But that, the athletic piece, their little, I don't know what number he was, that little center midfielder, like he was crushing us.
Yeah.
We couldn't.
Yep.
I had to step a center back on him because we couldn't manage him.
So such a love seeing a guy like who's 5 foot nothing.
Be the best player on the field.
Yeah, it was. So your Matt McDonald is one of my, like, I picked like the top 33 players. He was one of them, and I think it's because he was so much fun to watch.
Yeah.
And I was so impressed. The goal that you guys went ahead on, he wins the ball, 40 yards out, and then takes that ball down the line and then puts it across like that. I thought was, I mean, that was his athleticism, but also just his poise as to how do I get around this guy down the line and all that stuff.
Yeah. He's been playing wing for us, and he likes it out there. We went to Columbia for spring break. So we played 4 games there. NCAA lets you travel overseas every 3 years. It's funny in Columbia, man. Like we never have the ball there. They're just good. Like you scramble for a 50-50 ball. We always we can't get it back, and like they have it forever. But we won all 4 games. I should show you our stats. We won one game 3-0, and we never had the ball. We're just a little bit more disciplined in the attacking third than they are. They shoot from far out. They hit bicycles. They take high risk, high reward, but they're sort of undisciplined. But man, they're just so much technical, and they have better just soccer balance than we do. They're so good. So we have to play a different style even. We have to play mid block against them. And Matt had a lot of fun playing wing out there, and so. I mean, we play Bucknell tomorrow. I'm assuming you're not posting this anytime soon. I think I have 13 field players.
I'll come out. I'll dress.
Yeah, I'll take anybody at this point. So, we're not going to be able to play high pressure. We're not going to be able to do that against Bucknell, and so, but we're excited to be able to compete and play. And we've got our alumni in a couple weeks, so we'll see.
Where are you playing Bucknell?
It's at Bucknell.
Oh, it is at Bucknell? What time?
6 p.m.
6, really? Okay. Might meet in person. I might drive out there.
Oh my.
I think it's only a couple.
My stud center back, Len Coop, probably best player on my team, tweaked his hamstring. So I'm like,
oh my God.
I don't know if you're going to see a shadow of us. Luke Roddigham can't play because he's studying for his accounting, and so he's not a full-time student.
Oh
so
my God.
He can't practice. So we're just like, I got a litany of guys that have been under the knife. We're like, So
all right. Even if it's a bad game, it's okay. It's still soccer. Right. Speaking of. I mean, great players, you have these great players in your program, and you had 3 All-Americans, which I think were all greatly deserved. Jake Lencoop, who you mentioned, Luke Brodigham, and Trevor Goodling. And then I would also add, you had, who I think, he wasn't an All-American, but I picked him as one of my top 3 goalkeepers, Jared the Mullet Pavlovich. I asked this and for a number of reasons, but how critical are those guys to a team? I get the soccer quality and the All-American status, but in terms of what they do for you, your program, and for the team throughout the season, how important are they?
I mean, one of the things we do in the spring is we have player evals where they evaluate each other based on our core values, not whether they're a good soccer player or not, or whether they can Cruyff it, but on whether or not they're relationally invested, whether their ability to hold each other accountable or be held accountable, their work ethic. So like they do those things. I mean, the guys that you listed, those are all guys at the top of our lists.
Mm-hmm.
And we use the term standard bearer. I think you could use the term role model, whatever that may be. And for us, man, I'm like, there's no better model, whether you're in business or you're in sports, where your best players have the highest level buy-in and model to younger guys what it looks like.
Yeah.
To what it means to treat your girlfriend well, what it means to be respectful to your parents, what it means to study hard, what it means to kill it in the off season on a treadmill workout. And when your best players do those things well, it has a significant impact on your program. And the guys that you listed do those things well.
Yeah. Well, they show it on the field, that's for sure. I mean, every time I look to see, like, those moments, they're maybe not major moments, but you're like, hey, I have to rely on a guy. Who would it be? And it's usually one of those 4 where all of a sudden it's like, oh, look at that, makes a save, or suddenly controls the ball and settles down, and instead of being all crazy, hey, can we just get organized, drops the ball back, and you can see that leadership on the field. And there's guys are shining examples of that. What surprised you the most of this team this year?
I think one, how many goals we scored as a team. I know I mentioned that before. I mean, the fact that we got to the Elite Eight, where, especially, losing Luke Grotoff, I think he's certainly one of the most athletic players that we have, maybe second only to Jake Lentcoop. And so, I don't know if I would say anything other than those things in regard to being surprised. I don't know, man. I'm like, I don't know what to say in regard to like expectations. Like if I expect, like, I don't know. I always believe we can win, but I never just like assume.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So what are do you have any early thoughts about the fall and how things are shaping up, knowing how your recruiting is going and the guys you have coming back? Like,
yeah, I think we're going to be very similar. We're going to lose Trevor Goodling's engine. Like he works really hard. Grotoff, is he's recovering from ankle surgery. Luke Brodigan just got ankle surgery. I don't know, am I breaking all kinds of FERPA rules or something? But we're going to have a number of players back. I thought we played well in Columbia, and so I think there's certainly going to be some question marks positionally for some guys, but we're going to have a number of 5 out of 7 seniors returning, and I'm going to have plus 6 traditional seniors. So it's just I think we're going to be very similar. I think we'll be good. Are we going to be great or amazing or go really deep in NCAA? I don't know. I'm like, we'll be a good team.
Yeah.
For me, we'll start having questions in a couple falls.
Yeah.
I've got classes of like 3 field players, because we're not going to carry more than 23 to 25 guy field players, and so when you got 5 classes, it's made it challenging. And so there's going to be a time when we're just going to be really young.
Yeah. That's actually can end up being a good thing, right? Like that's how you reload. But hey, when you just talking about recruiting, do you go after, again, knowing all of the you want good kids, all of that, right? That sort of fall into the model that you have as to what you want to bring into Messiah. But do you go out looking for players who are good soccer players, or are you looking for guys who play positions?
Yeah, good question. I mean, first and foremost, we want to, we are in a position to be able to filter and rely on our network to learn of quality players. And so I don't just put my chair down and circle a kid who's a good player and send him an email. Just doesn't work, because I need him to want to be at a Christian school. He needs to care about his faith.
Yeah.
But if a kid reaches out to me, I'll go watch him play, and I watch him through the lens of our system and our style.
Yeah.
There's characteristics that we value for each position.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking for those characteristics to see if he would be a good fit in regard to both system, like where he would play, and stuff.
Yep.
So like we play 4-3-3, we have since 2000. And so when I'm watching someone, I'm watching them through that lens where, like, hey, would he be a good attacking center midfielder? Would he be a good defensive center
Right.
midfielder? If he's not, is it attacking center mid or wing? Like
Yep.
that, or is he a right wing or right back?
Yeah.
Is he a center midfielder or is he a center back?
Yeah.
Rarely do we find targets that play the way we want them to play.
Yeah.
If you go back through the history of Messiah men's soccer, many of our targets in our 4-3-3 were defensive center midfielders.
Yeah.
The only outlier was Josh Wood. He was just a post up target.
Yeah.
He came out of the womb posted up.
Yeah. That's great. Hey, just in that same vein, like, generally speaking, what do you kids who are making the transition to college, what experience do you think that they're lacking for the college game, that the only way that they're going to gain is if they play? Does that make sense? I don't know if I butchered that.
Yeah, can you say that one more time?
Yeah. So you're recruiting kids, high school kids that are coming out and they're coming to Messiah. Is there a part of their game that needs to develop before they really can have an impact in college?
I mean, we try and play freshmen right away.
Mm-hmm.
They just get coached more from the sidelines than the people that already know what we want get coached.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we play such a different way. We ask many things out of our guys that's unique. It's just a steep learning curve here.
Yeah.
But we throw them out there. We'll try and play 19 guys deep in a NCAA contest, let alone a preseason game. And so if I carry 24 guys, a couple guys are hurt. And there's some guys that don't play, but I'm like, that means freshmen have to play.
Yeah.
And so I feel like we teach so much. It takes a year.
Takes a while. Yeah. How long you think it takes a year?
Yeah, before like Masters is on, like if you're thinking about your swing, you're never gonna hit a good shot.
Yeah.
If you've practiced your shot and you know your shot and you're consistent with your shot, then and you go up and you're like, hey, I'm gonna aim for down the right hand fairway and draw it. If I miss hit a little bit, it's okay. I've got that whole fairway to aim for. And so that's helpful. And so when you're a sophomore, you're like, you know what's going on, you know what's expected, you know our team agreements, you know what is expected of you in this particular position that you've played, you've trained in this position, you know what the expectations are, you know what the choices are, and then because all of a sudden you're familiar with that box of team agreements and you're on the same page. Well, now you're not thinking about that. You're just like, you're just playing. Right now, you're in the flow. Now you're comfortable and you're confident. Now, some freshmen, they can do that right away. Many freshmen, there's smoke coming out their ears, and it's hard and it's difficult. And I think that's true anywhere. I just think it's even more so here because we're not like, hey, you need to rely on who you are and your ability as a soccer player to be able to contribute. We're like, you need to do these things well, and if you can do those things well, you're going to be a part of something bigger than yourself.
Yeah. Last question for you. Somebody who is who's interested in going to Messiah, how do they get your attention?
Yeah, just like everybody, I'm like, squeaky wheel gets oiled, fill out a questionnaire,
Yeah.
send the coach multiple emails that aren't generic, that aren't getting sent to 25 different schools, and and say, come see me play. And
Yeah.
for us, everything is based on our ID camp.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a guy sending out, information. He's just like myths about college recruiting. He's like,
There's
camps
no.
don't matter, and I was like, I wrote a really long response. I'm like, he didn't really get back to me, but for me, if I go see you play Jeff Cup or Potomac or an ECNL game, I'm like, hey, come to camp.
Yeah.
If and for me, I'm like, I need to know, like, is he a good kid? What is he like? What's his character? How does he handle himself? When he's winning, how does he handle himself losing? How does he handle himself when he's training versus playing a game? How does he interact with his teammates? How does he interact with his coach? Like, my question to Pharaoh, if we're dealing with a kid, I'm like, did you like him? That dictates whether we're going to take that kid or not. I'm like, I'm not going to learn any of that outside of having a kid with us for 2 days, 5 sessions, where like, because the kid that you love at the start, you just like, man, he's just like gladiator in a uniform. You're like, whoa, look at that guy. I'm like, but what it ended up being, by the 3rd session and the 4th, I'm like, who's that again? He's like, it's Jacob Bender. I'm like, oh, okay. Who is that again? Jacob Bender. He's like, doesn't look anything like a good player.
Yeah.
He kept, versus the guy that's eye candy. You're like, man, that guy. We want that guy. And in the end, we're like, no, he has a bad attitude, or he's ineffective. He loses ball. Where Jacob Bender, he's interesting. He's a really good player, even though he looks like an accountant. Now, he is an accountant. And he ended up being, a National Player of the Year, and his brother Ben was, picked first in the draft. But I'm like, we wouldn't have known that without camp. And so camp, recruiting is part art, part science. On science, we can get it down to 25 guys who we think is a good fit. The art part's figuring out where someone falls on the depth chart.
In that list,
If you're recruiting 14 kids every year, it's much easier. It's great. The reason you recruit 14 kids every year is because you're going to have a kid from each class quit, and you're going to have, kids fail out, and people are going to transfer. They're going to hop in the transfer portal. Yeah. So I need 14 kids every year because, I'm only going to matriculate, by the end, I'll retain probably 5 of those kids. I'm like, you have senior day where you have 4 kids in that picture. I'm like, how many kids were in their freshman class? Yeah. Probably about 12.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I don't have kids leaving, and I'm not going to carry 35 guys like some rosters do, because if you carry 35 guys, that guy on the end of the bench, he's leaving. I'm like, my model is to have upperclassmen, right?
Yeah.
Pour into the lives and model for the younger guys. I'm like, I can't have them leave me. I need them. I need them to learn and to grow and to mature and to invest. Yeah. And so we don't carry a huge roster. And so for me, I'm like, if I'm only picking 5 guys, I'm like, it's hard. It's challenging to get it right, because we get it wrong all the time. Yeah. Not usually the kids that we say yes to, but we'll say no to a kid. We said no to a kid. He was like, gosh, he ended up being the all-time leading goal scorer for a Division I school in New Jersey. I was just like, but we couldn't play at Messiah.
Yeah, that's like salt in the wound, right? Like you think, no one's ever gonna come back if I say no. He'll figure it out, and then he does that, right? Like almost to spite you.
There's like at our ID camps, I'll have 15 kids that can play on our team.
Yeah.
I'll have 8 kids better than some of the kids on my roster.
Yeah.
But I only have room for 5.
5. Yeah.
Because we're not going to recruit past our current players.
Yeah. Is that how you do it? Like, yeah. Okay.
Well,
That's interesting.
if they're not leaving, and then I'm not cutting them, they're not quitting, and they leave based on graduation.
Yeah.
And I got 10 million kids coming back for fifth years. Like, I know they have to leave, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, they're gonna be gone.
Yeah.
So
That's great. So to that, I'm going to go off, and on your website, I'll put links to your camps and to the website down in the description. Yeah, and then if there's anything else you want me to post, feel free to send it to me. I'll put it there. Again, no issues on that side. But hey, just wanted to say thank you for the time. This was awesome. I was all giddy about talking to you because, you know, I've probably about midway through I'll say earlier than that, when the first time I watched you, and I made this spreadsheet of all the teams I had watched, and I had counted passes, and I figured out, it became very clear how important control of the ball was for you guys. And I was like, there's a team. There's one team. So I was super excited to talk to you, and I do appreciate the time.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, and hopefully you get back to whatever job you're choosing, your real job or your side job.
Yeah, you know what? Like I said, I'm aiming to be a YouTube influencer, and and then I could live that lifestyle. You'll see me. I'll start doing videos in front of my Lamborghini, and then my yacht, and then.
Good job.
Yeah. All right, Coach. Do appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Yep.